He's been backstage, on air, and in the pit. L.A. Lloyd brings you rock like nobody else.
Hey, it's L.A. Lloyd. We got a lot of catching up to do today as we have Framing Hanley back. Nixon's here for his fourth time. And, you know, wow, last show was 2015. So a lot has changed, not just for the band, but rock music, the industry, and everything. So welcome back, and I appreciate you being on here to help us count them down today.
Yeah, man, I went from being, the fresh-faced kiddo in this industry to being one of the older vets now, I guess. So, as always, thanks for y'all support over the years, and it's good to be back.
Indeed, man. Well, when you guys first came out in 2007, like I said, everything was so different. I mean, everything from albums to radio to touring, kind of the machine felt different than it does today. Here we are 20 years later. So what is it about you and the band that, still being here and connecting with the people feels like this is the next chapter and things are looking good?
You know, taking the break that I took from music for a couple of years back in 2015, which was, all intents and purposes we were done. We were walking away.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just kind of not being submersed in the business side of things anymore when it comes to music, and what my passion had been for my entire life.
Right.
To get back to it helped me get back and gravitate back to music for the right reasons again, if you will. And I just fell in love with creating and writing all over again. I needed that again in my life. And we're very fortunate that we have people like yourselves and people like our fans that give a damn enough to this many years later to still be checking out what we're doing.
Yeah, and to follow that question up, I mean, what's something about Framing Hanley today that you honestly don't think the band had quite figured out, last time we talked 11 years ago? I mean, is there something now that looking back, hindsight is like, oh yeah, we feel like we would have never been where we are today if we, had that thought even back then? I mean, is there something that really stands out that you've learned over the past kind of quiet years, if you will?
Yeah, I think for the longest time, man, it was like this rat race that I felt like that we were trapped in, whereas, the suits, if you will,
Yeah.
Telling you what they need. And it's funny because, now I look at all these bands on these labels, and it's to watch them go through this now with people that are just like, oh, the advice that they get now is it's different maybe than what we were given back then, but it's still just useless, like baseless, like, oh, you got to have a hit viral video.
Right.
You got to have some content that goes viral, or the single isn't going to work,
Yeah.
I am glad to see the artists like more and more starting to call that out. But man, it really, at this point in my life, it's just, I don't give a damn anymore. Like if I'm writing music that's true to me and what I believe in and what I'm having fun doing it, that's all that matters. And to be at that point in my career, 20 years into this, it's such a liberating feeling to know that, when I pick up a guitar, I don't have any set expectation for what the song has to be, or, there is no certain width to how broad my brushstroke can be, when I'm painting on the canvas. So it's to have no rules. It's a very liberating feeling, and it made me fall in love with music all over again.
Well, and that kind of goes, back to 2015 when, you were having life that was happening and changing. Your oldest kid was starting to school. You kind of immersed yourself in the corporate world for a bit. But I got to think, like, from what I'm hearing now, that fire was still in there. And someone you've mentioned before was Jason Isbell, who really, still got you sparked and really was, I don't know if it was an influence or not, but at least some music that you loved that really got it going. So maybe talk about Jason and what really reignited the fire for you internally.
I think he's the greatest storyteller in music, perhaps ever. Certainly, he's someone when I can throw on any album from that guy and just like take a journey from song to song. And yeah, I mean, you say you're not sure if that's an influence. Absolutely, it's an influence, and that I credit him specifically for being, who really made me fall in love with music all over again. Just the journey that a song can take the listener on. And I don't think that I have any responsibility, if you will, to our fans or to anyone when it comes to writing. If anything, I have a responsibility to myself, and that's to be true. And, but I think that Jason approaches, and this is just from the way I see things as a fan, he approaches this with some just really, and maybe it just comes naturally, but just the ability to truly take his listener on this ride, from, story to story. Like his song Elephant is really what drew me in and made me such a huge fan of his. I think that's one of the greatest songs ever written. And it just, yeah, it's, I think that was lost in me for a while, is like, I was focused more on what the song could be or should become or could become, in terms of all the streams or the number of plays we'd get on radio. And a lot of time I was probably cutting the song off of it at its knees, just focused on that instead. So, I think for anyone not familiar with Jason Isbell, shame on you. He had some time in a band called Drive By Truckers, and he was a kid writing the damn like craziest songs back then.
Right. Yeah.
If you go listen to the song Goddamn Lonely Love, that's like a remarkable song, and he was like a kid.
Right.
Anyone that's listening to this that might not be familiar, if you've heard Morgan Wallen do Cover Me Up, that's a Jason Isbell song that Morgan Wallen covered. But yeah, I think that guy is just masterful at what he does, and I'll always be a fan. And incredible live as well.
It seems like the time away from releasing full albums, at least from what I'm gathering today, is kind of give you a little bit more of a patience, at least from a creative standpoint. Am I right on that, or has it made
Absolutely.
you maybe hungry and aggressive to get something out there? I guess maybe
I think for
both worlds, right?
Well, and it's always changing, right? Just like everything else about this damn industry, right? I think we did reach this moment where it was just singles, and then it seems like we started doing that, and then it's like, all right, now people are doing albums again. So it was nice to be able to drop a song every couple months, and but then I started to see the comments, when can we expect an album? And there is something to be said about giving a complete project as a finished project to your listeners. And I think with this album that is finally finished of ours, that we've done probably the most complete album that we've ever done. From start to finish, there's the storytelling in the album. I think musically, the journey that the sounds, the different influences of this album, it's the truest form of Framing Hanley that I think that we've ever presented. And I couldn't be happier.
Yeah. Where you've been based for most of your life, Nashville, it seems like you've seen the city grow and become what it is today. The last even 5 years, it seems like everyone has migrated, even from where I was at. I live here in Austin, to Nashville, no matter if you're rock or country or Americana or what the case may be. But Nashville's always been a great creative city musically. What does that city still mean to you, even though it seems like everyone else has kind of found out about the secret, if you will?
Yeah, it's I'm very privileged to have come from this city for this. It's obviously in the beginning of our career, a common question that I don't really get anymore, and it's because people understand that it's not just a country music city
Right.
anymore.
Right.
And they used to always be, what's it like being a rock band in a country music town? It's like, well, we're not, and right when we were coming up, you had Paramore coming up, you had Kings of Leon had just broken out, Red, there were all these rock bands, Safety Suit, all these rock bands kind of exploding on Nashville at once. And now, yeah, like to your point, now you've got rock bands relocating to Nashville. There's a ton of great writers in town. So just the networking opportunities when it comes to that is great as well. But yeah, Nashville's a special city. I'm a unicorn. I was born and raised
okay.
Right outside of Nashville.
Nice.
There's not a lot of me left in this town. But I couldn't wait to get out of Nashville when I was growing up. And then, I saw the rest of the country and I realized really how lucky I was to call Nashville home.
Yeah, indeed. The great thing about you guys, the way that you handle this nice balance between melody and also heaviness, and you talked a little bit more about the freedom creatively. I mean, do you still strive for that balance? Is it easier now than it was maybe on the last album? But like I said, you've handled it pretty well in the past.
Yeah, I don't. Again, I don't think that I approach songwriting with like it's got to be this or it's got to be that anymore. And I think this album is a very good depiction of that statement. Really, is you know we've got your influences like Jason Isbell, like we were just discussing rather, and then you know I love Childish Gambino, Donald Glover. I think is
Right.
one of the most creative people on this planet. Anything that dude does, whether it be music or films, like remarkable. Um, and then our favorite bands like Glassjaw growing up. So
Yeah.
it's like one thing about me is I've always had an knack for melody. So even the heaviest song, I'm gonna try to just naturally. I think I'm gonna have sneak some melody in there. It's gonna get stuck in your head. So,
Yeah.
but there's songs like The Reckoning, which is the heaviest song that we've ever released. And then we have songs like Sweet Tooth on this album, which is more of like a Depeche Mode, like
Hmm.
goth 80s pop type track as well. So um, again, I think I keep coming back to this analogy, but just to approach a canvas and not have any set parameters as far as what type of brushstroke or what direction your brushstroke or how wide the brushstroke has to be. It just makes it so much more fun when creating.
Yeah. But no matter how you can say that a gazillion times, but there's going to be fans that may have naturally attached themselves to a certain time that they
Sure.
fell in love with you or a
Sure.
certain sound that fell in love with you. And so I still got to think there might be that little voice in the back of the head going like, I hope our fans get where I'm going with this. I mean, does it still, or do you go like, nope, I got to write for myself?
Yeah, I don't, I think that there are songs, and I've let people hear this album that like I've become friends with over the years. That initially it started as just they were a really big FH fan,
Hmm.
and then over time we've become actual like friends. Those are always my favorite people to bounce like some of the new stuff off of just to see
Right.
their. And I've gotten pretty universally across the board like this sounds like Framing Hanley, but it sounds like Framing Hanley should sound in 2026. And there was no, it's got to sound like Sleep Token. It's got to sound like Bad Omens. There was none of that when we are putting it together. But I think this album, there are songs where it sounds like, oh, you could hear this band on tour with those bands. But there are also some very, I think, different sounds from us on this album as well. So, we joked around about throwing a country song or two on here just for fun. But yeah, man, I don't have to do anything, at this point. It's like I'm releasing music that I love, which I haven't been able to say that in a long time. Songs that like I'm like genuinely excited to share with the world. And hopefully the old fans remain fans. Hopefully we make some new ones. But at the end of the day, man, whether it's 30 people or it's 3 million, I'm lucky that anyone is choosing to listen to my music, and I'm thankful for it as well.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me to this next question where fortunately those fans and new fans have given you millions of streams now. That's just kind of how we measure success sometimes. I don't know if that's completely true, but back then when the band started, you could count how many albums you sold or how many spins you were getting on a radio station. But streaming has kind of changed it up a bit. Is there a way today that you feel as the new stuff is coming out and the album will come out eventually, a way to kind of quote unquote measure the success based on how consumers get their music these days?
No, if you can figure that out and let me know, though, that'd be nice. Because we'll throw something up one day on social media and it'll barely get any traction, and then the same song, just a different visual with it the next day, and it goes gangbusters. So I could go on a long diatribe about like how disgusting social media has really made the music industry. It started off as such a great tool for bands. We were a MySpace cover page band back in the day.
Right.
That's really what helped us explode, was like we were one of the bands on the front page of MySpace. But now it's like you have these companies that, I saw an interview with Matt Rife, the comedian, not the biggest Matt Rife fan, but he was talking about how on TikTok, when he first started popping off, like really started to pop off, he would post something, and then within, minutes, he'd have millions of impressions for the clip that he put up. And then he noticed it started gradually going down and down and down to like where a year or two later, like he would post something, would have no traction. He reached out to his rep at TikTok, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we're just not pushing stand-up comedy anymore." So it's like you have these apps, which, I mean, it's hard to get pissed at them because at the end of the day, they're a business, right?
Right.
But they've built their platform off of creators,
Right.
like across any medium. Creators is what these platforms have really. It hinges upon that, and then at any time they can just choose, what door to lock.
Wow.
It's disgusting. I complain all the time about how, like, we've only got like 400,000, I think, likes on Facebook, but what does that say? That means that at one point 400,000 people liked our band enough to go click the like button because they wanted to see more stuff about Framing Hanley in their feed, right? I don't even do that with my favorite bands. I'm bad about going and doing that. So 400,000 people do that. That's a big number.
Yeah.
To make that decision. And then when I post something, I can't even reach 3,000 of those people if I'm lucky.
Yeah.
Unless you put money behind it. And then you put money behind it, and guess what? Then Meta's like, oh, they're going to pay for this, so we're going to make them keep paying to reach. It's disgusting. I think, I do think we're due for the next big app. Wouldn't it be something else if all of a sudden an app came out that you only saw the stuff that you actually wanted to see? Isn't that just rocket science right there? Right? There's not an app anymore that does that. All of them are like, your entire feed is basically just suggested, because you liked something else.
I would be completely happy if they just came out with an app that was just devoted to music. I mean, and I'm not just saying rock music. I'm just saying just music in general, just a place to discover, I mean, I know there's Spotify and the streaming service, but it's seriously a social media site that just is really about bands, live concerts, whatever, man. I mean, I would be totally happy to see that, as long as the fans would have access to everything you put out there instead of being throttled down every time. And it is a constant battle, even in my world. I mean, it's like I started out old school DJ, never even thought about going like, oh, I need to have a camera on when I do this today because I got close to Rio for 30 seconds to let them know that Framing Hanley's going to be on the Rock 30 this weekend. I need to put up 4 or 5 reels leading up to that, just so people stay engaged.
It's insane.
It's so
right.
And it's when you have to do it by yourself, it's time consuming. I don't have a digital team. I'm the digital team, and many bands are as well. So it definitely is a struggle for sure.
And I can sit here and tell you that, like, it doesn't matter. I'm doing music for me now, which is true. But I have that dopamine addiction from short form content, just like everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So when I see something that we post about this song, The Reckoning, we first drop it and it blows up, and then a few weeks later or a month later, it's like, well, I don't have a bunch of stuff to post to follow that up with.
Right.
We spent a bunch of money on a music video. That's a great, and it blew up on YouTube, did its job, if you will. But then it's like, oh, well, I'm supposed to, everything about the business tells me I'm supposed to do something to follow up to keep this. But then you also feel at that point gross that you're just like, fans are starting to get sick of that.
Yeah.
They don't like feeling like you're selling something to them at all times. But there is this happy medium that you've got to meet, the where you do have to do that, or you're going to spend 2.5 years working on an album, and then you're going to drop it, and then 3 weeks later, it's like they're on to the next album.
Right.
And that's why I'm trying not to be stuck in that world anymore. But I just want, selfishly, I just want people to hear this album because I know it is the best work that we've ever done. And that's a culmination of a bunch of things, from the fact that it's the first album that we've done with this this iteration of Framing Hanley, which is the final iteration of Framing Hanley, me, Nick, Stoy, and Matt. And then we brought Richie Viconda from Fire from the Gods into the fold as well. And I can't say enough great things about Richie. I wouldn't be where I am right now in terms of my love for music again if it wasn't for Richie and it wasn't creating with that guy. I've never been a everything happens for a reason type of guy, but that guy, meeting that dude definitely makes me think that maybe that old adage is true. And I just, we spent so long working on this. I just want, if you were ever a Framing Hanley fan, you will not be able to listen to this album and not say like, damn, that's the best stuff that I've heard from that band. And I just want people in 2026, we're talking about next year, our debut album turns 20.
Wow.
I want people to hear this album and know where we're at now. There's not a thing that your favorite band's doing that we can't do, baby.
Yeah. Well, let me delve down into Richie a little bit more. What did he really kind of, obviously I can tell it was a big help and really mentally and everything for you. But what did he bring out that kind of surprised you that you didn't expect was going to happen, and he was like, kind of helped you get there?
Oh, just, I think in a lot of ways, just he's a beacon of positivity at all times. Just truly a ray of sunshine. I needed that a lot. Over the last few years, I went through some stuff in my life where, don't let Dana White from the UFC hear this, but my mental health wasn't great. I know he thinks men shouldn't talk about their mental health not being great, but yeah, and Richie was a big part of, I think, pulling me out of that, not just by being a friend, but also by reminding me of, the gift of gab, and, that I, sometimes dealing with what I'm going through music is the best way to deal with that. And the only way to deal with that, maybe, also just to work with someone that on the same wavelength, is huge. I've had that with a couple band members over the years, and like the band members now in Framing Hanley for sure. But from a songwriting and producer standpoint, I wrote a lot of these songs, just Richie and I. A lot of this is just, the album is just Richie and I. And then, so to have someone from outside the camp come in and see the vision that I have and to help me take it in that direction, was so vital, to creating an album that not only is true and honest, but just a ripper of an album as well. Yeah. And I just have fun being around that dude. He's also the only guy that I've ever met on this planet that likes coffee more than me. So, anytime in any city, because, he came on the road and played guitar with us as well last year. And like anytime we would get into the city, we're like, yo, let's find a local coffee spot.
Right.
Let's go. So, yeah, man, I think, he's starting to get his flowers a little bit, and like he's known, I think, a lot as for his mix work that he does in the industry. But like, dude is just such a good producer, and like I can tell you, like, I have no aspirations to do music anymore in the future without Richie being involved.
Wow, that's a big statement right there. I'm really glad you mentioned the rest of the guys in the band there, and what you call the final incarnation, if you will, because look, band chemistry is so important, recording, and especially when you're out on the road. What did it take to kind of get, the four of you there and find like this is the right combo? When did you kind of feel like you had it?
So Stoy was playing bass for us. And when Ryan stepped away from guitar, he naturally just moved over to guitar, and like that guy's one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. So I just love having, we talk about a beacon of sunshine. Like that guy's also, I could use that to describe Stoy as well. So just naturally made sense to keep him involved. Matt, I have known for many years in the Nashville music scene. Always admired him as a drummer. Always thought he was just such a badass drummer. So to have him also be a part of this was a huge get. And then Nick is like, Nick and I go way back. Um, I always admired him as an artist. We had a lot, especially for two dudes in rock bands in Nashville. Our similarities that we had in terms of what we were fans of in music, it was pretty wild to meet somebody else that was in a rock band that loved the kind of stuff that we love. Just, Bjork, like, true pop music. And so he came out as a guitar tech and tour manager for us for many years. And during those years, he and I started a side project. And it was, I was always dragging my feet. And a lot of that had to do with just being unhappy with where FH was at the time. And so a lot of that, the stuff that we had started working on just got pushed to the side. Nothing ever really got finished. And then, to come back years later and to chat with him and be like, hey, why don't you just join Framing Hanley? Why don't we do this music that we've been working on for years? There are no rules, why don't we approach these as Framing Hanley? And a lot of these songs, there are a few on here that were ideas that we've had for years kicking around, and we revisit as a rock band and kind of look at it through a different lens years later as people, different people than what we were when we originally started these sculptures. I love Nick. He's, my brother from another mother. And I'm very fortunate to not just call these guys bandmates, but to truly call them friends. And it makes this experience so much more enjoyable to be doing this with guys that you love. And, and any time we get together in the same room, it's the experience is unlike anything else that I've experienced. And especially again, when Richie's there as well, it's just, that dopamine is at an all-time high. So yeah, man, I can't say enough great things about this. Like you said, this last incarnation of Framing Hanley. And, I'm excited for what we've created together. And I think that people are going to listen to this and be like, oh, there is something special in the sauce here.
And regarding The Reckoning, I mean, even before you hear the song, I mean, the title alone sounds intense, confrontational, if you will. And as you said, you've got other music there, and I gotta feel that, what's the first song we're gonna put out there for everybody as we get ready to, put out the full album later on. Why was The Reckoning the obvious choice to kind of get things moving at this point of your career?
So we had dropped a couple other singles that are on this album as well. But this was the one that, like, going to radio, if you will. And like, it felt like, a good time to remind people that we are a rock band. And just remind people who we are and that, like, hey, we're still here. I think that this is, again, like I kind of made a comment about earlier, but this sounds like Framing Hanley should sound in 2026 to me. Like this, it's still you can very much still tell it's Framing Hanley, but, a little more oomph to it maybe.
Right. And, for the fans who've kind of been there with you over the past 20 years or so, obviously they've gone through different things in their life, their career and marriages and birth and all kinds of things. Divorces, life happens. Do you feel like maybe the music in 2026 might connect with them differently just because, you and your fans have kind of gone through life alongside each other at the same time?
Absolutely. And there's a song on this album that we did drop as a single. You can go, anybody that's listening to this, you can check it out in your spare time, called Poor Little Me, that I think is the perfect, example of what you're saying there. When we released that song, I was like, I think anyone that grew up with our band can relate with this song. And it really is about, just the journey that I think we all evolutionary go through as humans. And it's funny how I think at a younger age, not to get all philosophical, but like everything can feel so unique. And then as you get older, you're like, oh, this is the same stuff that my parents went through, and this is
Right.
what they were talking about. And I'm feeling, and I try to have those conversations with my kids now, and then I just laugh where I'm like, oh, they'll get it one day. That's my favorite thing to say to my kids is like, you'll remember that I said this one day. You'll think back like, oh, Dad told me I'd remember, because I do want those moments. Selfishly, I want them to look back and be like, oh, snap, Dad was telling me about that. But I know at this point, like I couldn't. There could be no further thing from cool than me in their eyes, So, but yeah, Poor Little Me, I think, is a perfect depiction of like the journey that we've all gone through over the last 20 years together.
Well, the way you've described that song and some of the other ones, the Depeche Mode-ish kind of pop
Yeah.
feel that you alluded to also. And I have heard the album is called Peace in the Void. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not supposed to say that or not. That's just what I heard through the grapevine.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I really still am happy that you guys are putting out a full album. And outside of the description of some of these other songs you mentioned, when fans do have a chance to get the entire album, why should they listen to it, front to back instead of just, downloading a single here and there? I mean, tell me about what you feel the experience is if you kind of go on the same journey that you guys recorded it as.
It's funny you asked that, because I think that people don't really think, and sometimes I wonder if the artist that I'm listening to think about that, because sometimes I'll listen to an album and I'm like, man, why did they put those 3 songs together right there? That
Yeah.
sounded like one long song. So yeah, there were, to your point, there's a lot of thought put into, sonically, thematically, the journey from start to finish of this album. And there were a couple different iterations of the track listing until we finally got to a point where I was like, yeah, that's where I want to take the listener. So yeah, I mean, if you're a fan of ours and have been for years, then you probably understand what it's like to put an album on and listen to it from start to finish and
Right.
kind of enjoy the ride. I think that's lost on a lot of people these days, but we put a lot of thought into that. I put a lot of thought into that when putting together this track list. And I think just right off the rip, talking about how sonically it matters too, not just thematically, but like the first song in this album is a track called Gimme Gimme. And there are so many sounds on this album that I think are a great culmination of like the other pieces that you'll get throughout the rest of the album, just in one song. So, yeah, that's a ripper of an opener. I can't wait for people to hear that track.
Yeah. Well, I sure am looking forward to it. In the meantime, we'll keep playing The Reckoning on the Rock 30 and hopefully attracting a lot more new fans that maybe doesn't know about Framing Hanley. We're on radio stations all over the U.S., so I hope that maybe someone goes like, well, who is Framing Hanley? I want to learn more about them, man. And that's the great thing about being in a band is keeping the discovery out there, which at least it is for me as a music fan. So I wish you the best on the new album, and maybe once the album's out, we can get you back in here and talk a little bit more about it, man.
Absolutely. And to your point, people forget radio is still the #1 music discovery tool. So to have you all supporting us, 20 years into this, it means the world. It's not lost on me. So thank you for playing The Reckoning. And any of you listening at home, if you don't know about Framing Hanley, you about to.
All right. That's a great way to close it out, man. Good to see you again, Nixon. I appreciate you being on the show.
You too, brother. Thanks for having me.